Good morning. Today is Sunday, December 6th, 2020. Our family was planning to see each other in a safe manner near the end of December. We were making plans for that. And we were disappointed when the government announced last week that no gatherings would be allowed. And I applaud, again, Premier Lau for making the right decision to protect us as COVID infections are rising and as our hospitals are dangerously nearing capacity. This is the right call. But it's imperative to repeat the attitude we must have. This past week, after Premier Lau made his announcement, Quebec's nurses and doctors all tweeted that canceling the plan to allow gatherings was the best gift the Premier could have given them. Even more dramatic, perhaps you saw this, was a press conference on Thursday featuring Brian Pallister, the Premier of Manitoba. Manitoba is now being devastated by COVID, hospitals overrun, infections rising, and he announced strict precautions that are now in place through the holiday season. And here's what he said. He said, "I will do what I believe is right, and right now we need to save lives." And he became visibly emotional as he said, "I'm the guy who is stealing Christmas to keep you safe. I'm the guy who has to tell you to stay apart. I'm that guy. You don't need to like me. I hope in years to come you will respect me for having the guts to tell you the right thing. And here's the right thing. Stay safe. Protect each other. Love each other. We have so many ways to show that. But don't get together." That's true leadership. I want to share this in a different context. And I ask you to keep this story in mind over Hanukkah and going forward. This is a great story. I heard this from Sivan Rahav Meir, and it concerns Rabbi Israel Lau. Many of you know of him. Some of you may have had the privilege to meet him. I have had the privilege to meet him. One of the great Torah leaders of our generation, one of the most eloquent Torah speakers in our day. You may know Rabbi Israel Lau, who was the former chief rabbi of Israel, was one of the youngest survivors of Auschwitz. He was 8 years old when the war ended. And he went with his brother to Israel. He was raised by his uncle, although he was an orphan. And he rose from an 8-year-old orphan survivor of the Holocaust to become the Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel, one of the most celebrated and respected authorities and voices in the Jewish world today. Several days ago, Rav Lau was asked to speak over Zoom to the students of yeshiva in the upper part of Israel, in the northern part of Israel, and he was specifically asked to group a number of students who were forced to give up their bar mitzvah due to coronavirus. They had planned, they had prepared, but they were not going to be able to have the bar mitzvah that they thought they were going to have. And of course, they were very disappointed. And Rav Lau was asked to speak to them, and he told them the following story. He said, when it was time for his bar mitzvah, again, this was in Israel, he was an orphan, he was being raised by his uncle. He started to prepare for his bar mitzvah, and he prepared to read the Torah for his bar mitzvah. In the shul where he grew up, there was a Jew who read the Torah every Shabbos. We'll say his name was Moshe. And this was an elderly man, and he read the Torah every Shabbos. And for whatever reason, the person in charge, the Gabbai, the person in charge, forgot to tell Moshe that on this particular Shabbos there was a bar mitzvah, and this boy, Yisrael Meir, was going to read the Torah instead of him. He forgot to tell him. Shabbos came, and the boy, Yisrael Meir, goes up to the bima from where the Torah is read, and he's standing at one side, and he has his talis on, and Moshe is standing at the other side of the bima, ready to read the Torah, as he does every single Shabbos. So the Gabbai who was in charge went over to Moshe and said, Moshe, today you're not reading the Torah. The bar mitzvah boy is going to read from the Torah. And Moshe said, but nobody told me. And the Gabbai said, I'm telling you. Now I'm telling you. Let the bar mitzvah boy read the parsha. It's his bar mitzvah. He prepared. Moshe says, I volunteer to read the Torah every Shabbos, and I do it every single Shabbos. And now you have a Shabbos where there are all these guests who have come to celebrate this boy who's a survivor of the Holocaust, and all these dignitaries, and a big crowd is here. You're telling me that I can't read the Torah? So Rabbi Israel Lau tells these boys about himself as 13 years old Yisrael, standing there wearing his talis at his own bar mitzvah. He says, I saw that this old man, Moshe, was becoming emotional. And I went over to him, this 13-year-old boy. I walked over to Moshe and I said to him, Reb Moshe, I am a very young boy. I have many, many opportunities to read the Torah in the future. I don't want to take away your honor. You read the Torah this Shabbos. And Yisrael Meir allowed this 13-year-old boy walked down to his seat, sat down, and this elderly gentleman, Moshe, read the parsha that Shabbos. And then he said to the boys he was speaking to, I think this was the first mitzvah I ever fulfilled. The mitzvah of giving something up. We never lose what we give up. That's the message Rav Lau had for these boys. It's a different context. But as Hanukkah approaches for us this Thursday night, it will be so different. And there is so much that we will be giving up. I urge you and me to be very careful about the health precautions that are in place, and not to look for leniencies or loopholes. Let's fulfill this mitzvah. We never lose when we give something up. And what we gain now is life itself. That's the mitzvah we need to always keep in mind. My friends, I want to wish you a great day. Stay safe and healthy. And I look forward to seeing all of you soon in person.